Hello? Does this look well regulated to you?
You know what else a well-regulated militia is? Well, regulated. These are the first three words of the Second Amendment. How is it even a question? Here's our message then. A well-regulated militia is well-regulated because a well-regulated militia doesn't kill children. Well-regulated! 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 Interesting, conservatives willingly dismiss and ignore the well-regulated part of the Second Amendment.
It's pretty obvious these guys don't know what they're talking about. And here's what's missing. This one will be quick and clean. When it comes to the Second Amendment, prohibitionists lament the alleged neglect supposedly suffered by its prefatory clause. Yet, ironically enough, they monomaniacally focus on that prefatory clause at the expense of everything else. But they don't even focus on the whole prefatory clause, just the first 3 or 4 words, and even then they don't get it right. They often get confused about the word militia, sometimes conflating it with the National Guard. Never mind that the National Guard is, organizationally speaking, still part of the U.S. military, and the U.S. Constitution specifically makes distinction between the military and the militia. The Heller decision clarified this point, hearkening all the way back to the Miller decision of 1939, which described the militia as being all males physically capable of acting in concert for the common defense. Now, most gun control advocates have statist sympathies, which is a fancy word of saying that they like government control of stuff, especially stuff that they personally don't like. So it's easy to kind of understand how, when they see the words well-regulated, that something clicks in their head of government regulation, burdensome rules and restrictions to limit the access and exercise of something. However, this was not the original intention, and the Heller decision makes this clear as well. It states that the term implies nothing more than the imposition of proper discipline and training. Now, notice that it does not go into detail as to where this discipline and training comes from. It leaves it pretty much open-ended. Now, these 2 points should be sufficient of themselves to lay the matter to rest. However, there is a third point that involves the rest of the prefatory clause that really wrecks gun control advocates' misunderstanding of the prefatory clause of the Second Amendment. And the phrase in question is this one: being necessary to the security of a free state. Now, this defines the function of the militia. The militia's function, according to this, is to help keep the state free. And these two have to logically jibe somehow. But if the state has free rein to interfere with the functionality of the militia in keeping the state free, then the state really isn't free. And what would be the purpose of having this in the first place if the state can just do whatever it wants to? The only conclusion that you can reach here is that gun control advocates do not have a proper understanding of what a well-regulated militia is. And this explains why they really don't discuss this part of the Second Amendment in the prefatory clause practically at all. And the Heller decision also underscores this point as well, saying that it was the militia's function to resist tyranny. And to recap, I consider the Second Amendment to be broken down into 3 parts. The prefatory clause into 2 parts, which we've just finished discussing, and the real meat of the amendment itself, which is the operative clause. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, there's a flow to this whole amendment right here. Here's a goal. Here is a means to that goal. But here is the source to the means of that goal. These two are dependent on this right here. And so if gun control advocates are really that interested in this part of it, they need to pay closer attention to this part of it. But bear in mind, this has already existed and exists independently of militia service, as it has been upheld by court opinions for over 200 years. So, what was that again about gun rights advocates not really taking into account the whole of the Second Amendment? I think I've pretty much demonstrated otherwise. Now, some people might be bent a little out of shape out of the extensive use that I made of the Heller case. Some people have this weird idea that Heller represented a departure from 200 years of Supreme Court rulings over the Second Amendment. Or worse yet, they believe that the Supreme Court has been largely silent over it. Actually, the Supreme Court has not been that silent over it. And that is discussed at length in this book right here, detailing 92 Supreme Court cases that have mentioned the Second Amendment and have upheld it as an individual right. Now, Dave Kopel took some of the research he did for this book and published it in a 1999 article that he did for the St. Louis Law Review. You can find that online. I'll put the link down in the comments below. But read up on it, get educated, and know that this is a part of our rights as Americans. It's not an aberration.